Hey man, what it do, YouTube? It's your boy back again with video, you feel me? So look, got a pre-build, pre-Harlowe build. Now, would I steal this build? I would have it in mind. I probably won't steal it bar for bar, word for word, but I'll definitely use it. Shout out to your boy Luke Unlocked. You feel me? Go sub out to him if you want more information, more anything. Get it from him off the rip. But let's get to it. Let me read it. Come on.
So continuing my build tier crafting for Borderlands 4, we have a Harlowe build focused around status effect damage and status effect chance and some potentially really cool interactions and combinations with what I think is her coolest action skill, which is Chroma Accelerator. But first we can go over her trait, which is Entanglement. If you are a fan of Amara from Borderlands 3, you'll be pretty at home with Entanglement. So whenever Harlowe uses her action skill on enemies, those enemies become entangled. And entangled is entangled enemies share a portion of gun and skill damage with all other entangled enemies. So it's essentially you hit an enemy with an action skill, they're entangled, you deal damage to that enemy with guns or her skills, and it shares that damage with all other entangled enemies. And at a baseline, it's 7% of damage dealt with a duration of 12 seconds. This will be increased from some other effects, but then we have her action skill, fire an unstable energy pocket from Harlowe's Chroma Accelerator. The unstable energy pocket passes through enemies and deals cryo damage to all enemies it passes near. Pressing action skill causes the unstable energy pocket to explode and deal heavy radiation damage in a large area. Has a decently long cooldown, deals a decent bit of damage, and then that massive explosion deals a lot of damage. This is the really big, cool looking skill where you just shoot out a big ball of energy that deals damage to enemies and blows up for a ton more damage. But her augment and capstone, if they work together, is going to be really cool. And that's also a disclaimer I want to make. We don't know exactly how some of these things are going to interact. So the interaction that this build is going to be focused around could potentially not work exactly how I'm thinking, and the build wouldn't be as strong. Even though I think if this interaction works in the least fun way, I think it's still going to be a pretty cool build. Now, because this build is so focused around it, I think we should go over our augment and our capstone first, because if this interaction works like I think it may, it's just going to be really cool. So our augment is Containment Breach. Whenever Harlowe's unstable energy pocket detonates, it splits into several smaller, fast-moving, unstable energy pockets. So basically, when you detonate this ability, it'll split into 5 additional projectiles that are much smaller and faster moving, essentially small copies of your action skill. But then our capstone is Cue Ball. Harlowe's unstable energy pocket bounces as it travels and can no longer be manually detonated. Each time it bounces, it creates a radiation explosion. Whenever it strikes an enemy, it changes direction and bounces towards another enemy. So now it has a 16-second duration, a 38-second cooldown, which is the same cooldown, but it lasts a lot longer, and has a maximum of 10 bounces. So essentially, you're changing up how the skill
10 bounces. I ain't gonna lie. Hearing, cause I thought that controller was dead. It just turned on my P5. So hearing this, 2 builds, Rafa build. Y'all remember Ultimate on my fault. Limited source of grenades on the Rafa build. This one kind of, I wouldn't say kind of like that, because that's infinite grenades. This is a chain, clear the crowd, clear the air, clear the air. They did say she was gonna take the spot of the siren. I'm messing with her. This might be hearing this. Need to see what that other, you know what I'm saying, the other tree talking about. But hearing this, definitely gonna be the second character. Definitely gonna be the second character. That's what I'm thinking. And then I'll make my Rafa build after this. First Amon. Who y'all going with first? Let me know. First Amon, then Harlowe, then Rafa, then Vex. That's what I'm thinking.
Works. Instead of this big projectile ball that you shoot in a direction and kind of go straight, this is just like a bouncy ball that bounces around and explodes every time it bounces. There's 2 ways I think it can interact with Containment Breach. Either Cue Ball explodes when the duration is over and detonates, and that's when Containment Breach procs, or each time it bounces, that explosion is considered the detonation, and every bounce it creates more of these bouncy fuzzy balls through Containment Breach, which will just be bouncing everywhere. And I'm assuming through Containment Breach, it probably isn't a direct copy. It's probably a copy that may work in a little bit of a different way. But again, I'm not sure how these are actually going to be interacting. And the most
or you shoot it, skadoosh, it goes out, blows up, and then that shit happen. And then maybe it can go out and then chain and then some what he's saying, but I'm thinking that first explosion, because either it's the first when you shoot it, it goes, right? Shoot it, it goes. Either first, like he said, it bounces off, and then each explosion, it splits up, or it explodes. You shoot it, it explodes, it splits out, and then it starts bouncing everywhere. Either way it goes, it might be a loop. I'm not gonna lie, it might be a loop.
Boring version, which is still seeming to be pretty strong, is that again, cue ball just goes through its 16-second duration, or it bounces 10 times, and then it detonates, because you can't manually detonate it anymore. Then it just splits into the 5, but I'm not sure if those 5, even if that's how this works, I'm not sure if those 5 are then going to bounce based on cue ball and have 10 total bounces and just be much smaller versions. I'm not exactly sure how that would interact, because they're gonna interact in some way. If they couldn't interact, they would most likely just disable the other one if you chose one. And I don't think there's anything like that in any of the skill trees that I know of. And when you choose like an augment or a capstone, it disables a different one. So presumably that's at kind of the base level of the interaction. Now, if it's actually proccing Containment Breach per bounce, this skill combination is going to be absolutely crazy. I think there's a lesser chance of that happening because of how crazy it would be. But if it does end up happening and these explosions are consider the detonations, this will just be one of the coolest builds in the game, or one of the coolest interactions. They're gonna so either way, I still think this build is going to be strong. It just depends how strong it's going to be if these interact like it potentially could and just become absolutely ridiculous. But then going into our points, we have a fuzzy math. Harlowe gains increased status effect chance, so it's 10% per rank, presumably 50% at max rank. And keep in mind with our capstone, every bounce it does radiation damage, so it can apply that radiation over time, and with higher status effect chance, it'll just have a higher chance every time it's bouncing and hitting enemies. We have increased action skill damage for 5 points, so just a bunch of action skill damage. Pretty much everything from our action skill, including anything from our augments or our capstones, should be increased from that. So even all these extra bounces and extra projectiles should be increased from that. Then we have elementary. Harlowe gains increased elemental damage and status effect damage, so more status effect damage with a higher chance to proc that damage, which can proc from our action skills, can also proc from our weapons, which we will be using weapons quite a bit with this, and then also elemental damage. This will be dealing cryo and radiation, which will be increased by that as well. Then we have test subjects. Whenever Harlowe applies a status effect to an enemy, she gains increased action skill cooldown rate, and this is 7% at 1 rank. It's a duration of 8 seconds. Presumably you get 7% with each additional rank, and it probably lasts for 8 seconds, and it probably just refreshes. So this will be up pretty much all of the time, which will be nice just to use our action skill even more. Then we're going down into the left tree. We have practical applications. Harlowe gains increased skill damage. So again, that's just everything from our skill, just a ton more damage to that. Then we have carry the one. Whenever Harlowe entangles an enemy, she gains a chance to entangle another nearby enemy. Presumably this is a 50%.
That's on every build. Anybody who plays Harlowe, you need to have this shit on. Especially when it gets to the end.
Chance at max rank. And also keep in mind, any damage from any of our action skill, so any of these bounces, any of the additional projectiles, will entangle enemies, which then every single entangled enemy will just have a 50-50 to entangle another random enemy. And then when enemies are entangled, because we're constantly bouncing these things around, all entangled enemies will take some of the damage any entangled enemy is taking from our action skill or weapons. So it'll really just be a bunch of really good synergies there. Then we go over to the right tree. We take mechanical brilliance. Whenever Harlowe damages an enemy with a skill, she gains increased skill damage. This stacks. So this stacks up to 5 times. Presumably it's going to be 10% per stack with a duration of 12 seconds. So this will just be a lot of damage. And depending on how everything turns out, we may actually have enough action skill cooldown rate to be able to have an action skill up doing something and dealing damage to constantly keep this up. Because keep in mind, our cue ball lasts for for 16 seconds with a 38-second cooldown. So hopefully within that 20 seconds where we wouldn't have a cue ball up, we would actually be able to reduce our cooldown enough to be able to have another action skill up within that time frame, so we could potentially have this up 100% of the time. Then we have Eureka, which is a passive. Whenever Harlowe enters fight for your life, she throws a free unstable energy pocket at a nearby enemy if there are any, and has a 40-second cooldown. So what's really interesting is I'm presuming this should take the augment and the capstone, because it just says a free unstable energy pocket. It should work as just getting a free action skill, and that's a 40-second cooldown. So to deal more damage, you may want to down yourself in some situations, which could be a really interesting gameplay thing, but you do just get downed a lot in every Borderlands game, so this will just be free action skills essentially. And then we have QED, Melee Overdrive. Harlowe attaches an unstable energy pocket to her fist and slams it into an enemy in front of her, and this has a 30-second cooldown. These do seem to have different scaling. Eureka has 807 damage, which is actually the same detonation damage as our action skill, so maybe this one is an actual action skill. This one only has 437, and I'm wondering, because this one sounds a little bit different, I'm wondering if you're just throwing out another action skill, you could do it every 30 seconds, or if this is a different version, because it sounds like you're just kind of slamming one of these into an enemy, and it sounds like you're kind of instantly detonating it. So I'm not sure if this one also will work with the augment and capstone. If I would have to guess, Eureka is just throwing an action skill out and it will work with our augment and capstone, but QED I think has a much lower chance to do that, and it may just be instantly detonating one. But that also brings into question, if you're instantly detonating an unstable energy pocket, will that proc a containment breach, spawning 5 additional projectiles that then like instantly detonate or something?
If this right here, if it do activate one of these, that shit gonna be crazy. I ain't gonna lie. Niggas be going down on purpose. And that's like that's a skill though, you know what I'm saying? That's IQ, you know what I'm saying? Oh, I know my player, I can do this. Go down, smack that shit or something. If one of them, like say just one, right? So if it's like, say both of them connect together, whichever one connect, so you smack it on there, containment breach, and start splewing shit everywhere. You feel me? And then you gotta think about it, you know what I'm saying? The cue ball, and then just start bouncing. Every time you go down, it's probably guaranteed more damage plus a get up. Come on, huh? The fuck?
So there's a lot of crazy interactions that could be happening with these passives. And then for our final 8 points, we go over to the blue tree. We have a 5 points into Pulse Drive. Harlowe gains increased action skill cooldown rate for 25% of max rank. Now, you may be able to take this out depending on what the different breakpoints are of having our cue ball out and being able to get another action skill up before cue ball ends or right when it ends. So you may be able to take out points of this.
They made Harlowe more of the siren than Vex, man. Vex spawning shit. Vex a necromancer. Look what she using science. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. That's gonna be some AoE slam type shit. You compare that with that, you right there, you smack both of these.
But we're in it just right now because we don't really know those breakpoints. Then we have 3 points into Quantum Immortality. Whenever Harlowe entangles an enemy, she gains health regen. So with 3 points, it'll be 3% health regen per second for 8 seconds. We'll be entangling enemies quite a lot because we just have a chance whenever we entangle an enemy to entangle another. And then our cue ball is going to be bouncing around for 16 seconds, which will just be constantly entangling. Then we have Containment Breach at the end of our action skill, which will then also just be spewing out more projectiles that then cause more entangles. So this will be a ton of life regen as well. But that's the entirety of this build, and I am very excited to see the different potential interactions with how all of this works. But I do think even at the most boring version of how all of these different things interact, that the build will still be good and still be pretty cool. There are a bunch of different levels of things that can interact. Like, will Eureka be an actual action skill like we're normally throwing it out ourselves that then turns into a cue ball that bounces around? Will every bounce of cue ball be considered a containment containment breach proc, so we just have dozens of projectiles bouncing around doing things?
Bunch
Will
of
the
balls.
containment breach additional projectiles work as a cue ball does and just start bouncing around for 16 seconds? Will the QED melee throw out a normal action skill? There's so many different possibilities with this that I think it's going to be really interesting no matter how it works out. But at the high end, all of these interactions working how you want them to is going to be absolutely absurd. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.
Thousands
I don't
of
know.
players searched for
That might be depending on how it works in game. Like he said, it bounces around and each explosion. So think about 10 bounces. That's 10 explosions, which equals 50 balls going everywhere. That seems hot. It's about to be 12. Ready for this game to come out. 2K26. I'm gonna go crazy. I'm tired, as you see. I'm out of here. Tell me how y'all feel about it, y'all. Y'all think about copying that whole build? I know y'all be doing that. You know what I'm saying? And I don't blame you. This is one of the games you really kind of, if you want to test it for yourself, you can do that. And, you know what I'm saying? And see how it works. Same 2K. But I'm out of here. Like shit, man. On that way to 4K, man. Sub up, man. Yeah.